We are good to start, Your Worship, and staff have confirmed that the live stream is on.
Thank you very much. So we will call the meeting to order at 2:08 p.m. This council meeting is being held by electronic participation pursuant to the municipality's procedural bylaw number 2020-020 as amended and section 238 3.1 of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended. The meeting will be live streamed on the municipality's YouTube channel. The video recording will be uploaded to the Municipality of Trent Hills website following the meeting. The first order of business is a bylaw number 2020-059, a bylaw to amend. Be resolved that bylaw number 2020-059, a bylaw to amend bylaw number 2020-020, a bylaw to govern the proceedings of council and advisory bodies of the Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of Trent Hills, procedural bylaw, and to repeal bylaw number 2020-041, be read a first, second, third time, passed and properly signed and sealed by the clerk and mayor. May I have a mover and a seconder, please?
I move, Bob.
Moved by Gene, second by Rick. Would you call the vote, please, Doug?
Councillor Bratney?
Yes.
Councillor English?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Kelleher McLennan?
Yes.
Councillor Metcalf?
Yes.
Councillor Redden?
Yes.
Councillor Tully?
Yes.
Mayor Crate?
Yes.
Carried by 7, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. We'll do the adoption of the agenda. Be resolved that the agenda for the council meeting of August the 4th, 2020 be received and adopted as amended to receive the correspondence dated July 31st, 2020 from S. Sochi, the council agenda item 8C, report EDC-2020-08. Would I get a mover and seconder, please?
So moved.
Moved by Rose.
Second.
Seconded by Kathy. Call the vote, please, Doug.
Deputy Mayor Kelleher McLennan?
Yes.
Councillor Metcalf?
Yes.
Councillor Redden?
Yes.
Councillor Tully?
Yes.
Councillor Bratney?
Yes.
Councillor English?
Yes.
Mayor Crate?
Yes.
Carried by 7, Your Worship.
Thank you. We now have disclosure of peculiar interest, and I understand that Councillor Redden will be declaring for item 8M.
That's correct. Planning report 2020-25.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you. If anything comes up, just let us know. We're now at minutes of council and advisory bodies. Be it resolved that the minutes of the council meeting held on July the 7th, 2020 be received and adopted as presented or amended. Mover and seconder, please. Moved by Rick, seconded by Mike. Call the vote, please, Doug.
Councillor English?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Kelleher McLennan?
Yes.
Councillor Metcalf?
Yes.
Councillor Redden?
Yes.
Councillor Tully?
Yes.
Councillor Bratney?
Yes.
Mayor Crate?
Yes.
Carried by 7, Your Worship.
Thank you. So we have no public hearings, we have no deputations, and no presentations. We are on to reports of municipal officers. Be resolved that staff report 2008, the Trent Hills Fire 2020-08 from Tim Blake, Fire Chief, Fire Department monthly report for June 2020 be received for information. We have a mover and seconder, please.
So move.
Moved by Ken.
Second.
Second, Mike. Call the vote, please.
Councillor Tully?
Oh, sorry. My mistake. Go ahead, Mike.
Through your worship, I'm just, is there a timeline on full completion of the move-in? Full completion of
I can respond to that.
the,
Okay, Lynn?
Well, the fire department has completely relocated. So, in terms of council, the issue is furniture. So we're awaiting that, which hopefully will be arriving in August. And there's some technology that hasn't quite been installed yet as well in the council chambers. So again, we're hoping for this month, but we don't have a specific time frame, unfortunately. But that is what the holdup is at that point. Otherwise, the building is complete. The elevator is supposed to be put in service, and I believe that's happening this week. And that's it. So,
Mike?
so the fire services is completely operational out of there currently,
yes, that's correct. They're responding now from that location.
and EMS is there, or like paramedics, Northumberland County part, is that?
I believe so. I think they were moving in around the same time. So I have not seen any ambulances, but as far as I know, they are there as well. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
I actually have seen an ambulance quote. I think we were doing video last Wednesday, Kira, and an ambulance when we were doing the video. So they must be operational right now too. Mm-hmm. Okay. Anyone else? The vote, Doug?
Councillor Tully,
Yes.
Councillor Bradney,
Yes.
Councillor English,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Kelleher,
yes,
Councillor Metcalf,
Yes.
Councillor Redden,
Yes.
Mayor Crate,
Yes.
carried by 7, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. Report PWK 2020-20. The RFP VPS 2020-02 Campbellford Business Park Servicing Design and Class Environmental Assessment Award. Be resolved that staff report PWK 2020-20 from Scott White, General Manager of Infrastructure Renewal and Public Works Administration, re RFP VPS 2020-02, the Campbellford Business Park Servicing Design and Class Environmental Assessment Award be received for information. That's a submission from SEMA Plus for RFP VPS 2020-02, Campbellford Business Park Servicing Design and Class Environmental Assessment be accepted at an upside limit of $202,403.75 plus HST. That a contingency of 5% of the total proposed submission, $10,250 plus HST be approved towards this project. That a geotechnical investment budget of $40,000 plus HST be approved to support this project. That an upset limit of $250,000 be reallocated from the 2020 capital budget for the Campbellford landfill closure project included in the 2020 capital budget be reallocated to the Campbellford Business Park Servicing Design and Class EA project. That the clerk execute appropriate contract documents with SEMA Plus, and that all bidders be advised of council's decision under the General Manager of Infrastructure and Renewal and Public Works Administration's signature. Can I get a mover and seconder, please?
Move
I'll move with a question.
Moved by Kathy, seconded by Jean. Kathy has a question.
Well, I just a little bit from Scott. I think what I'm seeing is we're continuing to move ahead, that this is part not just of the cleanup of the park and of the business park, but also preliminary work on our wellness center. And that we're proceeding, even though cautiously, but we're proceeding forward with that project, with the anticipation at some point of financing and funding coming. So you're seeing things going on down the road and working towards it. Is that correct?
Yes. So basically it was discussed at management team, I don't know, a few months ago, and it was just sort of in anticipation of looking at with establishing that the Rec and Wellness Center would be part of the Camelford Business Park. So management team discussed moving forward with, okay, if we're going to start looking at that, we should sort of incorporate that into the overall servicing plan for, I guess, what we would call phases 2 and phases 3 of the development of the park, being phase 1 along the Randy Gorge Drive there already being complete.
Okay, well, just further, Your Worship, I think this is an excellent way to go, and I'm really pleased to see that we're still being very positive about that project. I think there are too many times we can get caught up in the current situation and the crisis and forget about there's sunshine down around the road somewhere. And I think that we keep, as we can add these things onto or just stay the course, I guess, until somebody else tells us that it isn't going to happen, but we stay the course. And it also gives our residents something to look forward to. I've had some ask about it, and I said, no, it's still in our vision and it's still our dream, and this is what we're doing. So thank you.
Thank you. Michael?
Through your worship, Scott. So this this design, it covers the whole business park. We're not just limiting to the wellness center area. So it'll take us that next step to having a design for the whole park and going forward with that, correct?
That's the envision of it. So we're looking at, we'll be looking at running services right out, basically the 5th line to County Road 30, making connections of water mains. The pumping station would then be, where it will be located sort of in the business park. It'll accommodate the Rec and Wellness Center. It'll further accommodate those businesses or future businesses out along Highway 30 that aren't currently serviced with sanitary. So we're also looking at coming out on the allowance sort of there. I guess it would be to right beside Camelford Farm Supply. So again, we'd be looking at, looping water mains there, making sanitary connections, and again, to the existing that's in phase 1. And all of it would come part and parcel together. We'll be consulting with all other outside agencies and other utilities, whether it be Enbridge Gas, Hydro One, to, bring a full comprehensive servicing plan to the park that will also accommodate the Rec and Wellness Center, or proposed Rec and Wellness Center footprint. So with that, there'll be a network of roads, within the park that sort of will, I guess, accommodate any of the future lots that are there. And we can't establish all the lot sizing due to us not knowing who's coming to develop, but we'll sort of give it our best, shot thus far to try to accommodate as many lots and in various sizes as we can.
Thank you. Rick?
So Scott, what becomes of the landfill closure?
So the landfill closure is basically 95% complete as we sit. We're waiting on some fencing and some grassy, but that footprint of that existing landfill, we've pushed the material up within a limit. We've moved material in there, and it's now just going to sit. It's going to be just a nice little graded piece of land that will basically water will be accommodated off it. It's now capped in clay, so basically there's no more leaching, or we're trying to minimize the leaching that would come out of that old landfill. But basically that land is somewhat useless at this point. But it's still within the business park limit, but it's obviously outside of where we'd be developing.
Thank you.
Basically, aren't we looking at sort of green space beside the rec center?
Well, I don't know what it can be really used for. I guess it could be. We looked into all kinds of other options before, whether it be a parking lot, and nothing was really feasible, and it was very, very expensive for that. So I guess it's not saying that we couldn't cut the grass on it. Could it be utilized for something along that? But.
Okay. Ken?
Yeah, I just had a question on the geotech investigation for $40,000. How does that tie into the work being done by SEMA, or what does that involve?
So basically the geotech work will be part and parcel of sort of what we have to end up doing. It'll help us in terms of how we develop the park, because if everyone's aware, there has been mountains of fill and all kinds of different fill materials brought into that site in the past, 15, 20 years. So there's some investigative work that we require for that to sort of see what is below grade, confirm. It'll help us even establishing some of the roads in areas where they need to go. It'll help us establishing whatever road materials base will be required, bedding materials for water mains, sanitary, storm piping, all part parcel of those things. So it's a pretty aggressive budget, but I mean, it's required to sort of see what's in the ground. We have a decent idea, but there's been a lot of material brought in there and been pushed around, and I think we need to know before we go in. It'll also help establishing some of, say, the potential businesses coming into the park. They'll need to know what they need to do to, set the footprint of a building on, I guess, whether they need to go onto engineered piles or whatnot, or what type of excavations they'll need to do. So,
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Mayor,
Yes.
the award to SEMA, when does it start and how long is it expected to last?
We would award, we're a little bit late from there was a time frame laid out in the RFP, so we were sort of hoping to be having complete most of this by say the spring of 2021. Just with council meetings and adjustments and our whole new world here, we're probably a couple of months behind that, getting through it. So I would anticipate that mid next year we would probably have a lot of this documentation looked after, at least with the preliminary design, get the EA finalized with the province and signed off.
Thank you, Scott.
Okay. Anyone else? I'll call the question, please, Doug.
Councillor Redden,
Yes.
Councillor Tully,
Yes.
Councillor Bratney,
Yes.
Councillor English,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Kelleher McLennan,
Yes.
Councillor Metcalf,
Yes.
Mayor Crate,
Yes.
carried by 7, Your Worship.
Thank you. We're now at report EDC 2020-08, community strategy compliments and concerns policy. Be resolved that staff report EDC 2020-08 from Kira Mees, Community Development Officer, read communications strategy compliments and concerns policy be received for information. That council approve the communication strategy dated July 30th, 2020 as attached to report EDC 2020-08, and that council approved draft policy admin 008 compliments and concerns policy as attached to report EDC 2020-08. Can I get a mover and seconder for that, please? Moved by Rick,
I'll second it.
seconded by Rose. Any questions?
Oh, go ahead.
We'll start with Rose and then go to Mike and Rick.
Well, I was just going to say, we will be looking at some of the information that's been sent in from our residents and taking some of that into consideration for the final draft.
I can speak to that. To you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I think that we're really doing what the individual is suggesting. I mean, there is a paragraph where we do talk about all the complaints will be tracked. They also indicate that they need to have sort of a clear process to ensure that their complaints are addressed. That's really the intent of this policy. So I'm not really sure what additional items we would add in order to achieve it. I mean, I think the other thing is we're looking for some sort of annual report on a summary of the complaints. That would be the only thing that we have not included, and I'm not sure what benefit that would be, but we could look into that.
Thank you, Lynn.
Mm-hmm.
Michael?
Yeah, it's just through your worship, it's a little more, just a clarification. I guess I'm on page 6. It says a member of the public can expect a response to phone messages and emails to staff within 5 business days. So I don't know if this is correct, but I'm just putting this situation out there. If the 5 business days, say an administration staff has the 5 5 days and then passes it on to departmental staff, is there another 5 days and then a possible 5 days with 2 weekends and throw a holiday in there? Could we be at 15 days before someone gets a response? I'm just devil's advocate.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd say no. That and really 5 days is generously just to include should something come over like a late on a Friday, so we have those kind of the weekend days. We do say business days, but yeah, it would be within the 5 days, even with it having to be forwarded on. They're all processed daily, the ones that come into the website. So
right.
No 15 days.
So the 5 days would encompass administration response plus department staff response as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And it may be that there's a reason why we can't respond in 5 days, but the response would say that, right?
Right.
We require another week because we need to, do whatever investigation or whatever. So the idea is that someone will get a response within the 5 days. It may not be all the information at that point, but we will endeavor to get back to them.
Right.
Richard?
Yeah, I just wondered how much traffic is on this particular site? How much is it used?
Our website, like how many emails we get from complaints?
Yeah, the concerns, and how many compliments do you get, Lynn?
We do get the odd one, which is good.
That day 3 months ago.
Yeah. Doug, do you want to? Yeah.
So the feedback email that captures the compliments and concerns can range anywhere from no emails in a day up to about 6. It is checked multiple times throughout the day. It is the clerk and deputy clerk that administer that one. The info at, there are extensive emails that come in from that, and it's our 3 administrative staff that are constantly forwarding those out to the appropriate departments.
Okay, good to know. Thank you. I think it's a great service to have on our website. Thank you.
Okay. Call the vote, Doug.
Councillor English?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Kelleher McLennan?
Yes.
Councillor Metcalf?
Yes.
Councillor Redden?
Yes.
Councillor Tully?
Yes.
Councillor Bratney?
Yes.
Mayor Crate?
Yes.
7, Your Worship.
Thank you. Report Rec 2020-02, the draft recreation facilities reopening standard operating procedure. Be resolved that staff report Recreation 2020-02 from Peter Burnett, Community Recreation Office. The draft recreation facilities reopening standard operating procedures be received for information. A mover and seconder for that, please.
So moved.
Moved by Kathy,
I'll second.
second by Jean. Any questions? Rick?
I have a question, Peter. I guess now the Wark with Fair, of course, is canceled. And I really feel sorry for the kids in all of Trent Hills. And I really think they need something to do. Is there any opportunity with opening the arena in Wark earlier, like say the 1st of September? I think a lot of people would really enjoy it. I know it would get well used through the Calvin Minor Hockey System and Percy Minor Hockey for sure. And I just wondered if there was any thought given to that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. There's be a report coming to council shortly about the financial requirements to run the facilities this year. And I guess it will be decided at that point by council what the future will look like for that. If it was a regular year and the fair wasn't going on, potentially we could start the plant earlier. We are still endeavoring to replace a compressor this year with our existing capital budget. That process, or that project rather, hasn't been deferred at this point. So if that hasn't started, they're supposed to get in there next Monday to replace the compressor. So if that project goes without any issues and council decides to open the facility earlier, then staff could definitely look at that as an option. One of the challenges is staffing, and that's kind of what we're alluding to a little bit with this SOP, but our staffing levels will pretty much double in any facility that we're going to open this year. So if we pull twice the staff out of the parks earlier, that means there's twice as few staff that are, that'll be out there and required to run the building. So these logistical issues are what we're trying to work out right now.
Yeah, well, I just really feel for the kids out there, and I hope all the council agrees with us. And if we can open it earlier, I just think it'd be a real benefit for all the kids in Trent Hills. The other question I had, Peter, was I know you got an email from Greg Torrance, and Councillor Tully did as well. You were CC'd on it, and I think he kind of made a valuable point in there about the user groups having to sanitize the benches when they're not all trained, and then I don't think it's that big of a job, and possibly we should take a look at that and having staff do it for all the time it would take, and then it'd be done. They've been trained, and then it'd be done right. Because I would I'd worry about whether it was sanitized by a user group or not.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, I chose to include that in the draft SOP because it was a recommendation through the Hockey Association's return to play that potentially user groups could become and should be active participants in providing a safe environment for themselves and other people to use, so that they're not just using the facility, they're participating and ensuring that it's a safe environment for everybody. The logistics of it is another issue. It may be that the staff end up doing that. However, that was the reasoning behind putting that in there. It was actually a suggestion through the Hockey Associations as a method for buy-in and for users to be an active participant in that. If they want a safe and clean facility, they have to have an investment in providing that as well. So this is a draft document. It's not even close to a final document. So I do appreciate that feedback from Mr. Torrance and yourself. And the final draft may look quite different once it goes to health and safety and through senior park staff and so on. So I do appreciate that comment.
Okay, thanks, Peter.
Okay, Gene, and then Mike.
Mayor, reading Peter's report, it looks like in every 2-hour frame, there's only 1 hour being paid and 1 hour of kids using it. So that's going to drastically reduce the amount of activity, both brings money in and hockey or skating activity as well, if I read that right. So that's the world we're in.
Peter?
If I may address that, yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. I alluded to that in my verbal report last month, and that will return in the staff report that's pending following this meeting. The reality is that the available ice time for rentals will be pretty much cut in half, and our expenses in terms of staffing for cleaning will double. So that's the stark reality of the new trying to operate facilities in the new COVID world. And there'll be a significant impact to the existing budgets and future budgets as a result of that. So what I'll be returning, which I allude to in my report, is a report looking at scenarios and then the related impacts from a staffing perspective and loss in revenue perspective. So that'll be on the future report. But you are correct, Gene. That is the reality.
Your
worship. After Mike.
Kathy. Yep.
Yeah, through you, Mayor Crate. This might Lynn or Peter maybe be able to answer this. There has been talk about provincial or federal funding for PPE and COVID related expenses. Has any of that come to fruition, and would that sort of thing help with this type of extra expenses in our recreation facilities that we're looking at?
I'm not, I think our biggest expense, and correct me if I'm wrong, Peter, is staffing, right? That's really where we're going to have the largest impact to the budget because we are going to have to double staffing and revenue would be cut. So it's not necessarily in those areas of PPE and whatnot. So typically municipalities aren't eligible for those types of fundings for expenses like staffing. I'm not sure about the equipment end of it though, in terms of actual funding for that. Maybe that's something we could look into. I'm not sure how much of an impact it would have though on the operation of the arenas.
I was just thinking, due to the fact of the extra sanitizing and all the extra work, that is the reason why we're going to need all the extra staff, but that could be a stretch. That was just my logic behind it.
Worth looking into for sure.
Just another quick question. Has there been any work on looking at the Hastings Fieldhouse, Peter? I know you've got lots on your plate, but any thoughts on that one yet?
For you, Mr. Mary. Yes, there's a couple of portions in the draft SOP that refer to the field house specifically, but we require more. We had to focus on this due to, I guess, the need and the amount of work it needs in terms of trying to figure out all the scenarios. The field house, we do have a draft, but it's not ready to bring to health and safety at this point. The challenge with that is looking at what fitness centers are doing, and they're pre-booking only 1 hour slots, and you actually have to go in with a mask for 1 hour, and then you have to leave the facility. Drop-in events also is a big challenge. Everything has to be registered in advance for contact tracing. So it's a different requirement than what the arenas are, because the arenas have a user group and someone who is going to be ultimately responsible for every person that comes through that door. Where the field house is more of a, for lack of a better term, kind of a drop-in recreation facility. So it's going to be different. To sanitize certain areas of the facility is also different. So there's not a tremendous amount of field houses that we can, as examples, there's a lot more arenas that we've been able to, other municipalities kind of brainstorm and interpret the provincial orders. But the field house, we are working on it. But the immediate focus was trying to get something out for the arenas first, and using that as a framework moving forward for something we can use for the field house.
Kathy?
Yeah, I can see how this is going to be very difficult to get on its way, because it is such an issue of timing in getting things ready to get the ice in. And I certainly respect Councillor English's comments that we need something for the kids to be doing, and we need to find ways to get them focused on other things that are far better than thinking about than this crisis. But I guess my question is around the whole issue of how many kids we are going to involve through the hockey. I'm hearing from some that they're choosing to just let this season go and find other things that are a little more distancing or have less restrictions. I'm within our family, we have a hockey player, and I've been looking at all of the rules and regulations that have to follow this 9-year-old to be able to even get on the ice. And I know that if I had my druthers, I would be thinking, well, find something else that he can do. He's a great hockey player and loves it, but my goodness, I can see some families just saying it's too much. Going back to school will be enough. So I guess my question evolves around, what are we looking at in terms of even numbers that are able to take advantage? And that is part of our issue. Having talked to minor hockey, they're struggling to get their answers as well, to be able to keep and retain their teams and their numbers up, to make them a viable effort. So do you see anything from your discussions with other communities on how it's going in terms of the costs versus the value?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we're all struggling with the costs. We all recognize the value of having, you know, recreation opportunities for the public and for the children. The challenge is how much are the operations of these facilities going to be subsidized by the taxpayer? Right now, it looks like only three-on-three hockey is going to be able to be played. No contact. That, you know, that basically means 6 players, and that will change probably if COVID continues to decrease and not become a threat. But it is a very daunting process to try to figure out how logistically to operate these facilities safely. We have to remember that it's also a workplace, so we have to have our staff working in a safe environment. So, you know, that's going to be a challenge to make sure that, you know, those who are in the building are following the protocols that are there. And we have to figure out what do we do when those people, or if anyone doesn't choose to follow those protocols, because then we're not providing a safe workplace for our staff. So, you know, it is at all our meetings, we have another one next week, and there's a meeting tomorrow again about, because everyone's just trying to figure out what the new world's going to look like. There's not a lot of answers out there, so it's very difficult.
Rose, then Ken.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Kathy Ann got answers to some of my questions, but I did want to know the boundaries of the participants geographically. Are we going to be looking at children and families from outside of our municipality, or is it going to be contained within our municipality? And the reason I ask is that I still look at the overall picture of phase 2, phase 3, phase 1, all of that. And the jurisdictions that are doing well are adhering to what we've been told is the best practice to get through this pandemic. We're still in the middle of it, and we're going into the cold season. And I'm curious as to whether we're going to be expanding those boundaries or if we're going to be keeping it so that it's local.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't have an answer to that. I don't see how we can check ID for people that come in the building and turn them away. It's the same issue we have at Crowbridge Park or any other facility where, you know, people want to say it's just for local people only. It's very difficult. We won't have staff manning the doors and checking every person that comes in. I think we'd have to rely on a user group to make sure that the people that they have in their event are registered with their event and they have insurance and so on. I don't know. Logistically, I don't know how we could manage that at this point.
That's my biggest fear.
Okay, Ken, and then Mike.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I wanted to bring back the point that Mr. English brought up about I hate adding extra work to staff, but I would feel much more comfortable if staff was cleaning, let's say, the benches, because my business experience, if nobody is named to look after something, it doesn't often get done, or more importantly, leaving outside groups to clean a bench or an area. Some will do a good job and some will give it a lick and a promise. And considering we're dealing with a virus, I would like to make sure that the facility is left safe and clean. And my other point was that I don't see anything in there saying that user groups should take all their garbage with them. They should leave the facilities clean, because I think that would be much safer for staff if user groups were responsible for taking all their garbage with them, so there was nothing left in the rooms or any of the areas, so that staff didn't have to pick up things that could be potentially contaminated.
Okay.
Thank you, Ken. Through you, Mr. Mayor. The I'll just reiterate what I said before, that everyone needs to be an active participant in making sure the facilities are clean if they want to use them. As I said before, logistically, it may be that the staff do that. The challenge is, even with double the staff, an arena is a very big area to clean. So, there's every dressing room. You can only have X amount of people in the building, so you have to vacate the building and make sure people stay out. Dressing rooms and washrooms and high touch points have to be cleaned between each rental. This has to be done as well between each rental. So I do hear you about the garbage. In the hockey associations, all their documents, they talk about how not even a single tape ball should be left on the floor, and everything needs to be deposited into a garbage can that's provided and always has been provided. And then staff can just remove that bag and replace it between rentals as part of the cleaning. The challenge is going to be enforcement. If we have a group that comes in and doesn't do that, then we're going to have to figure out how we're going to enforce those rules. So that's just another layer on there. And again, there's many processes still needed for this draft SOP. It'll be going to staff and also to health and safety before we kind of put the final version out there. So no doubt there will be some changes made to the document. So I appreciate those comments.
Michael?
Just a couple quick points. With the user groups and having local users, I think that we have to put the onus on the user group, and that's where we can, and Peter, maybe you can provide insight, but if we're booking through a user group, we have to take them at their word that we're allowing a local user group to use a facility, and that's, I think, the point where we can have some look into who is using the facility. I don't know whether we can say, like Peter said, is every person coming into the facility only within Trent Hills? I think we have to leave that up to who is renting and do it that way with the user groups. As far as garbage, we have to remember that these user groups are still renting the facility. So like Peter said, using the receptacles properly is probably the way to go. And I mean, if they don't follow those rules, then they don't get to use it again. So those types of things, I think, are beneficial to remember. But like was said, the Hockey Association says you don't even leave a stitch of garbage on the ground at all. And then we'll look at it after that. I don't know whether we can, I guess we could ask them to take their garbage with them, but we have to draw a line as to what services we are going to provide and what they have to meet us with. So, thank you.
Thanks, Mike. It's all in. So Doug, I'll call the question.
Councillor Redden?
Yes.
Councillor Tully?
Yes.
Councillor Bratney?
Yes.
Councillor English?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Kelleher McLennan?
Yes.
Councillor Metcalf?
Yes.
Yes.
Carried by 7, Your Worship.
Thank you. Be resolved that staff report finance 2020-018 from Valerie Nesbitt, Director of Finance, Treasurer, Reserve Consolidations be received for information that the Director of Finance, Treasurer establish reserves named as follows: Water Reserve, Wastewater Reserve, Planning Reserve, Cemetery Reserve, and that the Director of Finance Treasurer transfer amounts within reserves as outlined in the financial impact section of Staff Report Finance 2020-018. Could I get a mover and seconder for that, please? Moved by Mike, seconded by Rose. Any questions? Call the question, please, Doug.
Councillor Metcalf?
Yes.
Councillor Redden?
Yes.
Councillor Tully?
Yes.
Councillor Bratney?
Yes.
Councillor English,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Kelleher McLennan,
Yes.
Mayor Crate,
Yes.
carried by 7, your worship.
Thank you. Report Finance 2020-019, Re-Budget Variance Report, Q2 2020. Be resolved that staff report Finance 2020-019 from Valerie Nesbitt, Director of Finance Treasurer, Re-Budget Variance Report, Q2 2020, be received for information. You get a mover and seconder for that, please.
So moved.
Moved by Kathy, seconded by Ken. Any questions? Michael?
Through your worship. Valerie, is there a year-to-year comparison that we have on this, just to see where we're at compared to other years?
I can provide that. I did not include that this year. We have developed a report when we reported to council re the COVID expenditures and monitoring certain revenues and expenditures, but we don't typically do it in this format for the quarterly report. But certainly we'll be hope to be bringing forward another sort of update regarding the COVID-19 expenditures. So you might see something there.
Okay. Just a follow-up if I can.
Yes.
With the expenditures at 40%, are we foreseeing any of the larger, any projects at all that maybe won't hit the books this year, depending on the revenue as well?
Through you, your worship, I think there were a couple of projects that were identified. The baseball diamond upgrades was on hold. That was a $65,000 project. And
sidewalks and boulevard.
The sidewalk and boulevard, which was also sidewalks is 100,000 and boulevards is 75,000. Those two projects are currently on hold for until 2021.
Okay, anyone else? Did I miss anybody? Okay, no more questions. Doug, would you call the question, please?
Councillor Redden,
Yes.
Councillor Tully,
Yes.
Councillor Bratney,
Yes.
Councillor English,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Kelleher McLennan,
Yes.
Councillor Metcalf,
Yes.
Mayor Crate,
Yes.
carried by 7, your worship.
Thank you. Report CAO 2020-12, Bylaw Enforcement Review Report. Be resolved that staff report CAO 2020-12 from Lynn Phillips, Chief Administrative Officer, Bylaw Enforcement Review Report be received for information. The mover and seconder for that, please. Come on, Mike. Moved by Mike, seconded by Ken. Any questions? You call the question, please, Doug.
Councillor Metcalf,
Yes.
Councillor Redden,
Yes.
Councillor Tully,
Yes.
Councillor Bratney,
Yes.
Councillor English,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Kelleher McLennan,
Yes.
Mayor Crate,
Yes.
carried by 7, your worship.
Thank you. Report Planning 2020-20 Interim Control Bylaw, Cannabis Production and Processing within Trent Hills. Be it resolved that staff report Planning 2020-20 from Jim Peters, Director of Planning and Development, read the Interim Control Bylaw, Cannabis Production and Processing within Trent Hills be received for information. That the Interim Control Bylaw for Cannabis Production and Processing within the municipality of Trent Hills be approved by council for a 1-year term from the date of passing, with the option to extend for 1 year further, in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act. That staff proceed with the review or study as required with respect to cannabis production and processing within the municipality of Trent Hills, and that the appropriate bylaw be brought forward for council's consideration. Can I get a mover and seconder for that, please? Moved by Ken, second by Mike. Questions? Kathy and then Mike.
Just a quick history question, Jim. When have we put one of these in place previously?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the last time we did this was when we had a proposal for commercial composting near Warkworth, and we passed an interim control bylaw so we could study the question of whether we wanted that use or not.
Thank you.
Michael?
Yeah, thank you. I think it's timely. I'm glad to see this. We need to take a step back and look at what's going on. I'm getting correspondence weekly, if not more than weekly, about concerns from residents on how quickly this is moving forward with cannabis, and with the operators and the landowners maybe not taking the municipality seriously or abiding by the rules of the municipality. So I think it's definitely something that I'm glad to see on the agenda, and something that we need to go forward with. I'd also still like to make sure that we're pursuing the federal government on the end of licensing, because that seems to be one of the unknowns and the issues, and I'm sure we'll have some time with this interim control bylaw to try to get that straightened out too. I don't know if we've received any correspondence yet from the federal level, as I know we've reached out at one or two or multiple times. I'm hoping that that they will listen and respond back to our concerns and questions on how those licensings and numbers of plants, etc., are allowed within our municipality. And OPP, I hope that they're on board and going to be looking at this as well. I don't know if there's any update on OPP involvement or federal response at all, but glad to see it going forward.
Anyone else? Gene and then Rose.
I've been alarmed at how these greenhouses have mushroomed out of the ground so quickly. Is there more than 3 that I'm aware of in the municipality?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there are multiple incidents of this happening, as well as numerous inquiries about possible properties where they're asking could they grow cannabis. So given the proliferation and given that no one's really following the guidelines and the regulations we've set, led us to bring this forward to council.
Thank you. Did it miss any hands? Rose, I think you're next.
I think Mike had a follow-up.
Oh, sorry, Mike. Go ahead.
Mine's a separate question, so it doesn't matter. I can.
Go ahead.
My question is with the properties that we are currently dealing with, how are they affected under this interim control bylaw if they're not currently abiding by the rules and regulations of what they've been given from the municipality?
To you, Mr. Mayor, we've sought legal counsel on this, and so it's really, we're dealing with it in 2 ways. If they've made an application for site plan control, we're dealing with that as we would. And if growing of cannabis is taking place without having an agreement in place, we're taking legal action as required to deal with that.
Okay.
So just a quick follow-up if I can.
Go ahead, Mike.
So the couple of properties that we're dealing with that aren't in order, I don't know, is there a stop work order, or how are we dealing with those ones specifically at this time? Is it going through legal pathway?
We'll certainly be able to give you more of an update in specifics under the closed session, but yes, we are dealing with both work orders under the Ontario Building Code as well as legal action through our lawyer.
Rose?
Again, some of my questions have been answered, but I just want to say that I'm glad that council's on side to move forward with this initiative and see what we can do. We're getting a lot of inquiries, as Jim has mentioned, and the first thing we're asked is, what's the amperage going into the buildings and what's the water supply? And as soon as we get those questions, we know exactly what they're looking for. If this pandemic hasn't taught us much, the one thing that I take away from it that I feel is really important is that how we look at our agricultural land. We've seen how much our food supply has been scarce, I'll say. We haven't had the luxury of an ample selection of food as we used to have. You go to the grocery store and you pick and choose. Now we go to the grocery store and we're grateful to get what we can get. That is increasing and improving. And so I think our agricultural land, we really need to do all we can to protect it. We're not through this yet, and hopefully it's not much longer, but I do feel that we cannot allow the bit of agricultural land we have just be used up on cannabis. That's my own personal feeling. So I appreciate the questions that the council has asked, and I appreciate what staff is doing to work towards the goals that we're all looking for. So keep up the good work.
Thanks, Rose. Okay, I think everyone's spoke. You call a question, Doug?
Councillor Tully?
Yes.
Councillor Bratney?
Yes.
Councillor English?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Kelleher McLennan?
Yes.
Councillor Metcalf?
Yes.
Councillor Redden?
Yes.
Mayor Crate?
Yes.
Carried by 7, Your Worship.
Thank you. Report Planning 2020-21. Subdivision application SB 01-2017, Napan Island. Lapsing date. Be resolved that staff report Planning 2020-21 from Jim Peters, Director of Planning and Development, re-subdivision application SB 01-2017, Napan Island. Lapsing date be received for information. That the lapsing date for subdivision application SB 01-2017, Napan Island, be amended from December 31st, 2020 to December 31st, 2023, as per the correspondence received from Templeman on behalf of 1865106 Ontario Limited, and that the applicant be advised of council's decision under the Director of Planning and Development signature. Can I get a mover and seconder for that, please?
I move up.
Moved by Gene, seconded by Ken. Any questions? Call the question.
Councillor Bratney?
Yes.
Councillor English?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Kelleher McLennan?
Yes.
Councillor Metcalf?
Yes.
Councillor Redden?
Yes.
Councillor Tully?
Yes.
Mayor Crate?
Yes.
Carried by 7, Your Worship.
Thank you. We have report Planning 2020-22 subdivision application SB 01-2011 Hastings Hills subdivision, Zemmer Holdings Limited, Front Street, West Hastings. Be resolved that staff report Planning 2020-22 from Jim Peters, Director of Planning and Development, re-subdivision application SB 01-2011 Hastings Hills subdivision, Zemmer Holdings Limited, Front Street, West Hastings, be received for information. That the revised lot layout concept plan for subdivision application SB 01-2011 Hastings Hill subdivision, Zemmer Holdings Limited, Front Street, West Hastings, be approved. And that a servicing agreement be prepared for subdivision application SB 01-2011 Hastings Hills subdivision, Zemmer Holdings Limited, Front Street, West Hastings, for council consideration at a future meeting. Could I get a mover and seconder for that, please? Moved by Rick, seconded by Mike. A discussion, Mike?
Yeah, thank you through your worship. I earlier today received correspondence from a resident of Hastings. They abut the property. I did forward that on to all council to take a look at. But I'd like to bring a few things forward that have concern from the residents that are near that subdivision. The first would be construction traffic and speeding along Albert Street. And the question would be, with the increased construction traffic due to the development, how are we planning to enforce the speed limits, which are challenged to enforce currently, and to ensure community safety while the increased amount of traffic is there during the construction. Also, they're concerned about or have a question of public input, wondering if there is another level of public input for this subdivision with the changes of the overall plan. Thirdly is lot line privacy with the development, whether there's any, the developer will be taking into account any of the lot line privacy. And the fourth would be noise and dust control during construction of the subdivision. Jim, if I did forward it, I believe you got a copy as well there. If you have any input on those questions.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, I did receive a copy, and I appreciate both the input from the citizen neighbor and Councillor Metcalf with sharing that. I think those are questions that can apply to any development that might be going on within the municipality, whether there's changes to the configuration or not. I think my suggestion would be that we maybe do an information circulation to the neighbors of this development to let them know how we deal with those particular issues or trying to deal. I know we've discussed traffic speed in multiple situations throughout the municipality, whether it be near development or not. We certainly have written into the development agreements ways to control dust and noise and things like that. So, you know, we could circulate, here's the plan, here's the new plan, here's some of the concerns, and just for information and to let them know that we're aware and we have ways for dealing with those issues. And maybe there are other questions other neighbors want to share with us.
Okay.
Thank you.
Kathy?
Yeah, I think that the letter has raised good issues that come to play at a time that individuals suddenly look around and realize that their area where they're living is the next one to have some kind of development. And perhaps, you know, when we're talking about our communications plan and some of the other things we're doing in terms of reaching out to the community, that Jim's made a good point, that if we do have a set of practices and policies around that we probably communicate or likely communicate to our developers of our expectations, but maybe those in our neighborhood aren't quite as confident that we've looked at it around noise, work times. We've seen different things come to this council. How long can they expect to have construction? When does it start? When does it end at night? We had some things this spring down by the bridge going across to the island, you know, mud on, how much mud can they expect to get on the roadway before somebody starts cleaning it up? All those little things, if we were able to set it out in an information package then and get it on the website, that would be a good way to make sure when they go searching for that, then we provided with enough up front, and if they have other questions, because I think there's enough development starting now around the community that we're going to hear more of that, and we should be proactive about it.
I agree. Listen, this might be a good time to bring up my thoughts on photo radar, because I believe that is the only way we're going to control speeds in Trent Hills. And it is, I mean, it just drives me bonkers to sit anywhere in any of our 3 urban centers and watch the people drive into town that are doing close to double the speed limit. So I think, you know, whatever consequence comes of it, getting a ticket in the mail that whether you were driving or not, but your car was doing in excess of a certain speed and you had to pay $100 fine, you might get somebody's attention. But we have to do something to control speed. And I know that the police are actively trying to do that sort of thing, but they only have so much time, and they've got hundreds and hundreds of kilometers of roads to patrol. But that is a serious question. Anyone else wish to speak? Yes, Rose.
Well, they're now calling photo radars called speed control cameras in the city of Toronto, and they seem to be embracing them. So I'm wondering if we just change the name. And I agree with you, Mr. Mayor, that I think the speed control cameras can do a lot. They certainly seem to calm a lot of the traffic along Trent Drive last year, year before last, and a number of other roads that we had the black cats sitting on. So maybe we should invest in that and talk to the OPP about a few more in our municipality.
Okay, anyone else? And I would call the question, Doug.
Councillor English?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Kelleher McLennan?
Yes.
Councillor Metcalf?
Yes.
Councillor Redden?
Yes.
Councillor Tully?
Yes.
Councillor Bratney?
Yes.
Mayor Crate?
Yes.
Carried by 7, Your Worship.
Thank you. Report planning 2020-23 quit claim deed for 4 Front Street, South Campbellford. Be resolved that staff report planning 2020-23 from Jim Peters, Director of Planning and Development, read the quit claim deed for 4 Front Street, South Campbellford be received for information, and that the lands described as part of Block Z, west of Mill Street and south of Bridge Street, Plan 112 being Part 6, 7, 8, and 9 of Plan 39R 11100, former town of Campbellford, be transferred to a quit claim deed to 115-53739 Canada Inc. And that the mayor and clerk execute any documents that may be necessary to effect the transfer of the subject property, and that the appropriate bylaw be brought forward for council's consideration. Can I get a mover and seconder for that, please? Moved by Kathy.
For the question, comment.
Yeah. Seconded by Rose. Okay, Kathy?
Well, I made a couple of comments before we came on air and asked Jim if maybe he'd just do a tiny bit of history on this. This is a very interesting piece of property that was filled in a number of years ago and was made up of, I don't know, dozens of different holdings that have been consolidated back there. So I guess I'm just curious if Jim could just bring us up to speed on where we stand with all of them, or whether this kind of tidies up the last of what we tried to do to give access to the back of the buildings, and what might be left in terms of our responsibilities.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So this would allow the municipality to continue to own the majority of the land behind the building. But if you've looked at the survey attached to the report, you see there's a strip. It varies from 6 to 7 feet in width. It contains a couple of stairwells that go down into the basement of the building, and some concrete work that goes between those. So it's essentially part of the building. It's just sitting on land that we happen to end up with, and it makes sense for this to be reestablished as part of the building. It's not land that we would look to use in the future as part of the green space back there. It's part of those buildings, and it makes sense that it be added back in. But yes, there is quite a history of land ownership in this part of Campbellford, and many past surveys and past ownership. So this helps to clean up another piece of it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Call the question, please.
Councillor Redden?
Approved.
Councillor Tully,
Yes.
Councillor Brett,
Yes.
Councillor English,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Kelleher McLennan,
Yes.
Councillor Metcalf,
Yes.
Mayor Crate,
Yes.
carried by 7, Your Worship.
Thank you. Report Planning 2020-24, assumption of a portion of a road into municipal road system, Percy Broom Road, former township of Seymour. Be resolved that staff report Planning 2020-24 from Liz Stillman, Planning Coordinator, reassumption of a portion of a road into the municipal road system, Percy Broom Road, former township of Seymour, be received for information. That the lands described as part of lots 4 and 5, concession 2 being parts 3 and 4 on Plan 39R-14093, a portion of Percy Broom Road, former township of Seymour, be established and assumed into the Trent Hills Municipal Road System, and that the appropriate bylaw be brought forward for council's consideration. Can I get a mover and seconder, please?
I move.
By Ken, seconded by Rick. Any discussion? Would call the question, please, Doug?
Councillor Tully,
Yes.
Councillor Bratney,
Yes.
Councillor English,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Kelleher McLennan,
Yes.
Councillor Metcalf,
Yes.
Councillor Redden,
Yes.
Mayor Crate,
Yes.
carried by 7, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Redden has disappeared. Okay. Report Planning 2020-25, assumption of a portion of a road into the municipal road system, Harris Street, former town of Campbellford. We resolved that staff report Planning 2020-25 from Liz Stillman, Planning Coordinator, with the assumption of a portion of a road into the municipal road system, Harris Street, former town of Campbellford, be received for information. That the lands described as parts of lot 35, 37, and 38, Block A, Plan 112, being parts 5, 6, 7, and 8 on Plan 39R-14109 Harris Street, dash north of Gary Street, former town of Campbellford, be established and assumed into the Trent Hills Municipal Road System, and that the appropriate bylaw be brought forward for council's consideration. The mover and seconder for that, please. Moved by Rose.
Second.
Seconded by Jean. Any questions on that one? Would you call the question, please, Doug?
Deputy Mayor Kelleher McLennan,
Yes.
Councillor Metcalf,
Yes.
Councillor Tully,
Yes.
Councillor Bratney,
Yes.
Councillor English,
Yes.
Mayor Crate,
Yes.
carried by 6, Your Worship.
Thank you. We can have Kathy come back. Hi, Kathy. Report Planning 2020-26, assumption of a portion of a road into the municipal road system, 7th Lane East, former township of Seymour. Be resolved that staff report Planning 2020-26 from Liz Stillman, Planning Coordinator, reassumption of a portion of a road into the municipal road system, the 7th Line East, former township of Seymour, be received for information. That the lands described as part of Lot 13, Concession 7, being Part 5 on Plan 39R-4803, a portion of the 7th Line East, former township of Seymour, be established and assumed into the Trent Hills Municipal Road System, and that the appropriate bylaw be brought forward for council's consideration. Can I get a mover and seconder for that, please? Moved by, seconded by Jean. Any questions? Call the vote.
Councillor Tully,
Yes.
Councillor Bratney,
Yes.
Councillor English,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Kelleher McLennan,
Yes.
Councillor Metcalf,
Yes.
Councillor Redden,
Yes.
Mayor Crate,
Yes.
carried by 7, Your Worship.
Thank you. Report planning 2020-27 potential properties in the village of Hastings to be provided for a Habitat for Humanity project. Be resolved that staff report planning 2020-27 from Jim Peters, Director of Planning and Development, potential properties in the village of Hastings to be provided for a Habitat for Humanity project be received for information, and that staff take the appropriate steps to partner with Habitat for Humanity regarding the development of a single dwelling on property 2 is identified in staff report planning 2020-27 within the village of Hastings. Mover and seconder for that, please.
I'll move.
Moved by Rose, seconded by Mike. Any discussion? Mike?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, just a quick question. Property 2, I do like the idea of that property, just with its location and whatnot to the parks in the area. What I know it talked briefly about financial impact. What are we looking at as far as the municipality on what the possible future financial impact on this agreement is?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So I think we need to do a little more analysis on that when we come back with some more information. But we know through discussions of consideration of development charges and building permits and things like that, that if we choose to waive those costs, we have to make up for it somewhere else. And that comes out of the tax levy. The suggestion here is that an appraisal of the value of the land can be done. And if council wants to transfer the land at a reduced rate, that would be the place where they could make a financial contribution. But that'll be up to council in terms of once you have the information about the value of that land, and if you want to choose to do it, and we're not, and if you do, how you choose to make that contribution. So that, I think, is the next step after this.
Thank you.
Jim, sorry, go ahead, Ken.
Just given all the details get sorted out, how quickly would this project move ahead?
Well, I know through you, Mr. Mayor, Habitat for Humanity was still anxious to try and get started this year. Obviously, we'll convey this information to them once council's made its decision. An appraisal will have to be done, and the final documentation and transfer information will have to be brought back. So hopefully we could see it started this year.
Thank you.
Jim, just is this the lot that we discussed earlier about someone on that street looking for another piece of property?
Yes, it is, Mr. Mayor, and I've noted that in my report that we have had inquiries about this property in the past, but I think if we're going to support affordable housing and have these partnerships, we have to take advantage of lots that we have come into possession of.
Thank you. And anyone else? Call the question, please, Doug.
Bob, I got a question.
Oh, sorry, Gene. Did I miss? Sorry. Go ahead.
I tried to tour the sites a couple of days ago, and just to clarify, this lot that we're favoring to be one north of the municipal site, municipal yard?
Yes.
Across from the dome?
Yes.
It's not right at the corner of Elgin and Queen then?
I think it is. Is it right on the corner, Jim? It looked to me like that in the survey that I looked at, but
Yeah, there was a map in the report. Yes, that's the location at that corner.
Yeah, right on the corner of Elgin and Queen, yeah.
The lawn's already cut down.
Yeah.
It could be.
Maybe they're
cutting the grass.
Anticipating that.
If someone's cutting the grass, I'm not aware of who it is.
Okay, well, that's the lot, not the one that's overgrown with trees and that are put there. To the south of that.
Well, it's right on the corner as far as it.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Anyone else? Sorry, I missed you, Gene. Call the question, please, Doug.
Deputy Mayor Kelleher McLennan,
Yes.
Councillor Metcalf,
Yes.
Councillor Redden,
Yes.
Councillor Tully,
Yes.
Councillor Bratney,
Yes.
Councillor English,
Yes.
Mayor Crate.
Yes.
Carried by 7, Your Worship.
Thank you. 2, Planning Report 2020-28, Use of Road Easement Agreements. Be resolved that staff report Planning 2020-28 from Jim Peters, Director of Planning and Development, use of road easement agreements be received for information, and that the use of road easement agreements as a legal method to allow the use of portions of unassumed and unmaintained municipal roads to provide access to private lands for development be endorsed. Do I have a mover and seconder for that, please? Moved by Kathy, seconded by Rick. Any questions? Kathy?
Yeah, I think this is an excellent agreement to have in place, a report to have in place, and I think it's something similar to the private roads where individuals who are in a location that have difficulty with access or something can see immediately right up front what it's necessary to give them access or what the costs are and what's involved. And I think in this case, it's good. My question would be, at this point, it sounds as if you may have some early use for this if it does go in place, or you're looking at some. Do you see a number of lots currently opening, Jim, that might not be accessible unless this is in place, that would increase some development?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we've certainly had inquiries where this would be applicable. And, you know, short sections of road where you can't really travel beyond that because of physical features like a ravine, but it doesn't make sense for the person to either undertake the long process of trying to purchase the road. And we know, if we remember Wortman Road, that we went through that, it took a long time. We realized, oh, it's used by the ATV clubs, and it's used by for fundraisers and different things we didn't anticipate. So it gives us, I think, another tool to look at very unique situations where there's a short section of road where it doesn't make sense for it to be brought into the road system and be maintained, but we might have an opportunity through this to allow them to bring it up to a certain standard and let them be responsible for looking after it.
Okay. Anyone else? Call the question, please, Doug.
Councillor Redden,
Yes.
Councillor Tully,
Yes.
Councillor Bratney,
Yes.
Councillor English,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Kelleher McLennan,
Yes.
Councillor Metcalf,
Yes.
Mayor Crate.
Yes.
Carried by 7, Your Worship.
Thank you. The reports of members of council, updates for the members. We'll start with Councillor English.
Really nothing to report this time. I have attended a couple of EOTA meetings, of course, as you can see in the minutes, but dealing with a few concerns of residents around the village as well, and some on the outskirts, but really nothing much to report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kelleher McLennan, Deputy Mayor Kelleher McLennan.
Myself off mute there. Well, I spent most of my my weekends running around the municipality, as I know a number of you guys did as well, with concerns from local residents regarding overcrowding, et cetera, on some of our recreational sites. And unfortunately, as we know, we had to shut a couple of them down, but there's still some areas that I think need to be attended to, and there's still complaints coming in, as I know staff and the rest of council are aware of. Had 2 BIA meetings, one on the 13th of July and the 27th, and just looking at going forward in the midst of the COVID-19 and how we can support our businesses and some resemblance of normal and getting things somewhat reopened for those that are ready and wanting to get reopened. And then myself and Councillor Redden was involved with the library board. And so we had some wonderful interviews, which I'll let Councillor Redden speak to that because she's more qualified at that and been on the library board much longer than I have. But we were very pleased that we had the number of applicants that we had and that we had the quality of applicants that we had. So when it's time to announce that, I think you'll be quite impressed with the results that came forward. And that's about it for me.
Thank you. Councillor Tully.
Yes, I did go online and watch the virtual boundary review and sat through all of that and saw some of the questions raised. And other than dealing with some concerns on cannabis production, that's about it.
Thank you. Councillor Metcalf.
Yep, some correspondence from residents mainly on cannabis, and again a little bit on the boundary review. I think it was a very good review, and we've got a lot to talk about when we get to that point. But I think it was very well done. But yeah, that's about it.
Thank you, Councillor Brahimi.
Mayor, we had a PSB meeting, Lower Trent meeting, and I took in the ward boundary review. Also had a meeting at Crow River Bridge with 35 residents that were very upset with the thing, and followed up with 3 or 4 trips out to the Crow River Bridge in Randy Falls, seeing the crowds we had. And I was pleased to be attending when they raised the flags at the fire hall, and also the next week when the trucks arrived to join the building. And on a sadder note, I attended the celebration of life of 27-year veteran fireman Steve Stapley last week. So that's it.
Thank you, Councillor Redden.
Just some comments on the interviews for the trustees and the response for the applications for the library board. We actually had 9 applications, which is wonderful. Unfortunately, while 2 of the applicants were supporters of our library system, they don't qualify because they reside outside of the community. So we hope that they stay involved and stay interested, but we have to stick with our rules. So we did 7 interviews and virtual interviews, which was really interesting. Went very well. Everybody was able to participate. And I have to say that I am so impressed with the width and the breadth of the knowledge and the interest of people within our community. The majority were new residents within the last 5 years, or individuals who have been coming to our community but are now relocated permanently, and really keen and bring a lot of different talents and skills to sort of fill out what's on our current board. So as you may be aware, we will be bringing 2 recommendations later, and then during the closed session, and then disclose them afterwards. And also raising the number on our board to a complement of 7 rather than 5, so that if there is a need for any board member to retire during their term, we're not left as we were before. And thanks to the deputy mayor for coming on board and making sure we could still operate. It would have been difficult. So I really am quite impressed, and we'll make sure that they do get some form of correspondence and a thank you for their time. And I'm sure we're going to see many of them continuing in other volunteer capacities. I'm going to reserve my comments around the Crow Valley for that item on the agenda, because there's a lot to be said there. And my involvement both as the chair of the Conservation Authority and the Crow Bridge Park, and a few comments around Callahan Rapids, I think will bring into light some of the things that staff have been doing on that. I also participated in the boundary review, sat through it twice. Once I sat through it, and the second time I kind of coerced Brian into listening to it and sat while he listened. I'm a little surprised at the few numbers that were there, although I have seen on Facebook and social media that they are fairly positive about what they heard, and they're encouraging everyone to read the resources. And sitting and thinking about it, I got a lot of really interesting ideas in my mind, and there were even some additional options that came from those participating. So for those that were there, I think it was great. I also took up this morning the last donation of the non-medical masks that were well over 750 or more that have been sewn and made strictly for the hospital by this group since April. And just want to publicly thank them for what they're doing. I know every time we go up, Marilyn Petherick is very excited to get more of them, and they are handing them out. And there are individuals that are making great use of these masks. And as I said, I think that what I'll do is save my Crowbridge comments for that part of the agenda.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I don't have an awful lot. I've had a number of meetings with some local residents, mostly over things like speeding, the Crow, Randy Falls, the suspension bridge. So those are the main meetings and that I've had with people. I was glad to attend the putting up the flags at the new fire hall. That was a great event, as well as attending the I guess the placement of the trucks. It was interesting. They pulled all the trucks into the hall, and then they said, well, we think this one would be better over here. So then they started, it was almost like a jigsaw puzzle to get them all into the spot where they would be best utilized. So that was good. I took part with the warden to start a video regarding doing a virtual tour of the new hall. Had a couple of Board of Health meetings. I've had 3 meetings with the mayors of Northumberland County, along with a few from Otonabee, South Monaghan. There's one from just west of Port Hope, along with our MP and MPP. We've had 3 of those meetings in the last month. And as Jean said, I attended the Celebration of Life for Steve Stapley, who was the deputy station chief, and you know, someone that I think I met Steve when he was 5. I was maybe dating someone that lived across the street at the time, and so therefore became part of that sort of family with the Stapleys and all the people around. It was really an awesome community, and Steve was so involved and so committed to the community and the other areas that he was involved in. So it was a sad time, but the turnout was very, very good. So that's it for me. We'll move on to the consent agenda. We announcements of interest to the public. We had a media release for the Crow Bridge Park closure and the Rainy Gorge Suspension Bridge closure. We have the minutes of the Trent Hills Public Library meeting held on May the 7th. Minutes of the Eastern Ontario Trails Line meeting held on June the 11th. The Autonomy Conservation Year watershed news for the summer of 2020. We have correspondence format change of the 2020 Cooks Rapids Country Fest Drive-In Concert for September the 5th, 2020. And we have a request to proclaim September the 9th as Fetal Alcohol Spectrum Disorder Awareness Day in Trent Hills. And correspondence regarding the Canada United campaign, Show Local Some Love, and the Trent Hills Buy Smart Local campaign. Be resolved that the staff recommendations with respect to consent agendas 10B to 10G be adopted as printed. Can I get a mover and seconder? Moved by Rose and second by Rick. Any questions? Kathy?
Yeah, I'd just like to make some comments around the Crow Bridge announcements and a couple of clarifications around, or just for some information, maybe an update to council on what's happening, both with that and I think I'll sort of go over into some issues around the Crow Conservation Authority because of the Callahan Rapids, and we get a bit of a spin-off up there as well. I just want to start by extending my personal appreciation to the staff, municipal staff, and as well to the volunteers that took place last weekend, majority of them from our staff, as well as a number of firemen, firepersons, and the work that they did to immediately respond to issues that cropped up literally overnight. I've had a lot of conversations with the residents out there, and they can't say enough about what they saw the municipality of Trent Hills do to try and respond to a huge overwhelming interest in the beauty and the nature and the things that so many of us take for granted by individuals from all over Ontario, not just Toronto, as some may think, but all over Ontario. And I think we were surprised and caught short, and I think we've done our best to respond to something in an emergency situation. So I just want to say how much it's appreciated, and everybody understands why once is enough, that at a certain point drastic measures have to be taken, and they are, and so just a thank you to those folks. The meeting that Jean spoke of at the Crow was actually one that was convened by a number of interested folks around the Crow and around Callahan Rapid. And unfortunately, the individuals that called it, I think primarily were spurred by the Callahan Rapids, and the Crow got included as well. And it turned out that evening that the Callahan Rapids group, the group kind of split in half. There was a meeting, but a number got left at the Crow, looking for someone, and with the impression that either the Crow Valley or the municipality had called that meeting, which neither one had. I had been tipped off about the meeting, and I was away that week and got back that night to a phone call, where are you and what are you doing? And I had earlier had an email from staff that they knew nothing about it, that we had no involvement. And I'd also spoken to the Crow earlier, and they knew nothing about it. So this is one of those times, Your Worship, where you get kind of caught in the situation. And what happened is the person that called me actually put me on speakerphone, and we had a bit of a meeting, and I was able to relay to them some information that thankfully our CAO had passed on to me in an email. And I was able to read the email, and they understood where we were with this situation. And I think the next day people started to work on what was taking place. So we acted on that pretty quickly. Since then, we've been communicating with a small group, about 4 people, who have agreed to pass on to the residents of that area what they found out. And so through staff, through those communications, we've managed to really dampen the fires and keep things under control. And I think this weekend it went well. I don't know if Lynn wants to speak to that, but the Crow Valley has posted on all of its social media that the Crow Bridge is closed, and that and tried to stop people from just driving down and expecting to go in and have services there. With respect to the Callahan Rapids, where a number of people are now going from the Crow and maybe going out there for a similar experience, a lot of our issues there are more the ATVs, and we're going to be talking with the Trails Association about that. But I just, as a sidebar, our cottage is not too far from Presqu'Île Park. And this weekend saw what I think the people at Crow have been experiencing. I've never seen anything like the numbers and what happens when people can't get into a park. Once the park's closed, where they go, how they want to access the water, and how persistent they are in trespassing on private property to get to where they want to go. And I actually had a conversation with the Brighton councillor this morning, And they're in the same position of having to put long lines of pylons through private properties and private drives to stop, just to give the message, this is not where you can be parking, where you can be driving. It's not just our community, it's all over Ontario, as you've seen, from Niagara Falls up to Orillia, Wasaga Beach, all through. And I think it's something that we're going to have to do some long-term planning on, in terms of realizing we live in a wonderful part of this country. Other people want to enjoy it. And I guess we're going to have to spend some time on figuring out how they can enjoy it. On the other hand, when I came into town last night and did the tour of our waterfront and some of the areas, there was nobody along the canal. It was absolutely gorgeous. Nobody out along the canal. There were picnic tables and tables. I think their persistence in seeing what's on Trip or one of the travel whatever sites sends them to certain sites and they miss a lot of the other ones. And maybe we can do a better job in saying, well, if this place is booked, this one has lots of room. Somewhere that we can keep them from just focusing on the one spot and then not knowing where to go when they're out there. But my compliments to those that have dealt with it. We do plan a meeting in the fall at some point with a group of individuals from the Crow Bridge Park area. They're taking pictures, they're keeping logs, and they are willing to work with us. They understand some of our limitations. And if you're speaking to anyone, please let them know that staff have this well in hand. And once we get through this crazy time, then in the fall, we plan on meeting with them and working with them to find a way to see a good future for this park.
Thanks, Kathy. I couldn't agree more with what you said as far as the parks go, and I think it's incumbent on us to sit down and evaluate the situation and make some decisions on how we're going to operate these tourist areas in the future. I mean, I've seen, you've seen areas where they've cordoned off certain areas for local people. I don't know if that would work, but I think all those things have to be part of the conversation we have this fall on how we're going to proceed. So thank you very much for your remarks. So Mike, yes.
I'd just like to bring attention to two things. The Crooks Rapid Drive-In, they've done a good job of trying to change with the times, and I hope they get some support to get through this season and hopefully work towards next. But I'm glad that they're giving us the correspondence and continuing to let us know how they're handling that. And the Canada United campaign, I think everyone should remember that, show local some love. I know there's a lot of businesses that are still really struggling. There's some that have adjusted and are doing well, but a lot that still need our support. So get out there and support those local businesses.
Actually, thanks, Mike. One of the things that came up during our conversations with the local mayors was in Norwood they have something called Shop Local, Shop Often, and you get to sign all your receipts from shopping locally, and they all go into a hat, and there's a $50 prize provided for weekly for the the people that partake. So and he says it's really doing very well in Norwood, so might be something for us to look at too. So anyone else? Call the question, please, Doug.
Deputy Mayor Kelleher McLennan.
She waved, I saw her.
Councillor Metcalf.
Yes.
Councillor Redden.
Yes.
Councillor Tully.
Yes.
Councillor Bratney.
Gene?
I think he had technical issues.
I think so.
Councillor English?
Yes.
Mayor Crate?
Yes.
Carried by 6, Your Worship.
Thank you. We are now at correspondence, request for water for an outdoor rink in Hastings. Be resolved that correspondence dated July the 20th, 2020 from Dennis Forbes, request for water for outdoor ice rink in Hastings be received, and either that the request for water for the outdoor rink in Hastings be respectfully denied, and that the applicant be advised of council's decision under the Director of Legislative Services and clerk's signature, or that the installation of a yard hydrant to provide water during the winter months for a community volunteer maintained outdoor rink to be located on a portion of the lands to be maintained for park use be approved as an in-kind contribution, and that the applicant be advised of council's decision under the Director of Legislative Services clerk's signature. So does someone wish to make a motion either or? Mike?
Can I move to defer this so that we can have further discussion? I think that it wouldn't be fair to staff to make a decision, or for us to make a decision without staff's involvement at the level that we need. Peter's been super busy trying to get arenas and sort of those facilities together, and I think we need to have a better discussion on this. I had talked to Dennis regarding this and some of the concerns and some of the benefits, and we look at the other areas and other communities that have tried this. Campbellford tried it last year and was unfortunately unsuccessful in being able to do it. And I think that it needs a little bit more of a discussion than what we can provide right now to make this decision. So I would still like to definitely have this discussion, but I think it needs to be deferred until we can get some more information.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Kathy?
Well, I don't know if I'm making a point of order or asking for a point of clarification, because I think the discussions with staff have taken place, have they not? And perhaps, you know, I agree with Mike's comments, but I think those discussions have taken place, and that we are kind of moving forward with something that can come back to us for clarification. So could we have that clarified? Otherwise, I agree with Mike, we need to have it.
Okay, Lynn?
Sure. I mean, we met with Dennis actually last year, but I think it was well into winter at that point, so it just wasn't feasible. At that time, we had suggested they locate it at the field house because there's water there, washrooms, someone could go and get warm, etc. But I think the desire is to try and keep it downtown, which I understand. So the request for a, I guess it's called a yard hydrant, is essentially just a tap that they could use to flood their outdoor rink is doable. It would probably cost in and around $1,500 to install something like that, which we do all the time. We've done them for the community gardens, for example. So that's not an issue. I think that the question is, well, it's not really a question, but this needs to be a volunteer run facility. So if there's something else that's required of the municipality, I think that's where the discussion needs to be, to your point, Mike. I'm not aware of anything else that's being asked for. We've been very clear that it needs to be community run. If it's municipally run, the standards are completely different, and there'd probably be ice about 3 days of the year. It wouldn't make sense. But a community volunteer-based rink is something else, and that's our understanding as to what this is. So beyond that, that's really all the information that we have at this point. So certainly the yard hydrant is doable, and we can make those arrangements, no problem.
Michael?
Yeah, just a little bit of clarification. I know in the discussions previously, volunteer versus municipal staff, we get into different regulations that the municipality has to keep up with due to provincial regulations with ice surfaces and that sort of thing. Does that just fall under if the municipality is looking after the ice space, or where does that fall under locating a volunteer rink on municipal property?
That's right. So we would probably have to have some sort of agreement, but it cannot be maintained by the municipality. So it can be located there, but it would be volunteer run, community run. So that's true. So it's the issues around, yeah, the standards would be different. And also, you know, with an outdoor rink, typically a lot of that maintenance and flooding happens in the middle of the night. So it is sort of it's not a job for municipal staff. It's a bit of a challenge, but I'm not sure what their situation is. They could have a whole group of volunteers that are willing to do this. And the building material was the other thing I recall us discussing. I don't know where they landed with that in terms of they were trying to source boards and that sort of thing. Obviously that's a big consideration too, but I know in the letter from Mr. Forks, he did mention that there would be some community fundraising. So perhaps they have all that well in hand at this point.
Kathy?
Your worship, since Councillor Metcalf doesn't have a seconder, I don't think, could I propose, just to get it, to keep our clerk happy, could I propose the motion that we approve the water, that you know, some of the questions that have been raised be brought back just to flesh it out. I also had a long conversation with Mr. Forbes, and I was under the impression a lot of this was going to be worked out and dealt with by local community group, just us, and providing and everything else was community based and up to them, so that if other parts of the community want the same thing, then they do the same things. I think there's some discussion, what about Warkworth, what about Campbellford? So I'm proposing, unless somebody wants to second, that we approve the installation of the water.
Okay.
But I don't have a seconder. Yeah.
Your worship, Councillor Redden was cutting out. So if I've understood correctly,
sorry.
It's working with the OR, approving the installation of the yard hydrant, that additional information be brought forward with respect to the operation of community outdoor ice rink prior to an ice rink being installed, and that they be advised under the clerk's signature.
Right.
Does that capture the motion?
Do we have a seconder?
I'm happy to withdraw my first motion and second Kathy's motion with some further discussions with the group. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, Rick?
I just really think we should have an agreement in place as well, and for us to see, be it generic or whatnot, because this could be precedent setting. So I think it's important to have an agreement in place.
Okay. Anyone else? Call the question, please, Doug.
Councillor Redden.
Yes.
Councillor Tully.
Yes.
Councillor Bratney.
I don't know if I should vote on this, Doug. My computer took a hiatus here, and I just come back in as you just called the vote. So
would you like
maybe
to?
I should sit out.
Oh, so you're going to abstain? We'll mark you as
yes.
Abstain. Okay. Councillor English.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Kelleher McLennan.
Yes.
Councillor Metcalf.
Yes.
Mayor Crate.
Yes.
Carried by 6, your worship.
Thank you. With the bylaws, be resolved that bylaw number 2020-055, bylaw number 2020-060, bylaw number 2020-062, bylaw number 2020-063, bylaw number 2020-064, bylaw number 2020-065, bylaw number 2020-066, be read a first, second, third time, passed, and properly signed and sealed by the clerk and mayor. Motion moved by Rose, second by Rick. Any discussion? Call the vote.
Deputy Mayor Kelleher McLennan.
Yes.
Councillor Metcalf.
Yes.
Councillor Redden.
Yes.
Councillor Tully.
Yes.
Councillor Bratney.
Yes.
Councillor English.
Yes.
Mayor Crate.
Yes.
Carried by 7, your worship.
Thank you. At this time, we will be going into a closed session. Motion to go to closed. Be resolved, we do now go into a closed session at 4:03 p.m. to discuss personal matters about an identifiable individual and litigation affecting municipality. Can I get a mover and seconder for that, please?
So move, Bob.
Moved by Rick,
Second.
second by Rose. Can I, a recorded vote, Doug?
Councillor English,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Kelleher McLennan,
Yes.
Councillor Metcalf,
Yes.
Councillor Redden,
Yes.
Councillor Tully,
Yes.
Mayor Crate, Councillor Bratney,
Yes.
Mayor Crate.
Yes.
Carried by 7, Your Worship. If you can give me a moment, I'm going to stop the live stream.
Yep.
And then following the closed session, when we rise, we will also just continue our recording.
Okay, yep.
Recording has restarted. We are ready to rise from closed session, sir.
So could I get a motion to rise? Ken and Rick? You want to call the vote, Doug?
Councillor Tully?
Yes.
Councillor Bratney? Councillor Bratney?
Yes.
Councillor English?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Kelleher McLennan?
Yes.
Councillor Metcalf?
Yes.
Councillor Redden?
Yes.
Mayor Crate?
Yes.
Carried by 7, Your Worship.
Thank you. Be resolved that we now rise at 4:46 p.m. Report and closed session items 14B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, and C, litigation affecting municipality. That's been done. So we have motion regarding B, which is be resolved that the confidential verbal information presented by Deputy Mayor Kelleher McLennan and Councillor Redden re personal matters about an identifiable individual be received, and that the Hills Library Board be increased to 7 members, that Dorleen Lynn, Jennifer Lee, and Deputy Mayor Kelleher McLennan be appointed to the Trent Hills Library Board for the balance of the 2018 to 2022 term of council, that the appropriate bylaw be brought forward for council's consideration, and that the Trent Hills Library Board and all the applications be advised of council's decision under the Director of Legislative Services signature. Can I get a mover and seconder for that?
So moved.
Moved by Kathy. Second by Nick. Any discussion? Would you call the vote, please, Doug?
Councillor Redden?
Yes.
Councillor Tully?
Yes.
Councillor Bratney?
Yes.
Councillor English?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Kelleher McLennan?
Do I vote on myself?
You vote on the other two.
Yes. I'm sorry, that was a yes?
Yes.
Councillor Metcalf?
Yes.
Mayor Crate?
Yes.
Carried by 7, Your Worship.
Thank you. Be resolved that the confidential verbal information presented by Jim Peters, Director of Planning and Development, and Kat Kinch Eddy litigation, litigation affecting the municipality be received, and that the municipality proceed with the appropriate legal action with respect to non-compliant cannabis operations, and that staff proceed accordingly. Could I get a mover and seconder? Rick and Rose. Any discussion? Call the vote, please, Doug.
Councillor English,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Kelleher McLennan,
Yes.
Councillor Metcalf,
Yes.
Councillor Redden,
Yes.
Councillor Tully,
Yes.
Councillor Bratney,
Yes.
Mayor Crate,
Yes.
carried by 7, Your Worship.
Thank you. Resolved that bylaw number 2020-61, a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the council meeting held on Tuesday, August the 4th, 2020, be read a first, second, and third time, passed and properly signed and sealed by the clerk and mayor. Could I get a mover and seconder for that, please? Moved by Ken, seconded by Jean. I was going to say all in favor, but I'll ask Doug to record the vote.
Councillor Tully,
Yes.
Councillor Bratney,
Yes.
Councillor English,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Kelleher McLennan,
Yes.
Councillor Metcalf,
Yes.
Councillor Redden,
Yes.
Mayor Crate,
Yes.
carried by 7, Your Worship.
Thank you. Be it resolved that we now adjourn at 4:50 p.m. Moved by Rick. Second by Rose. Call the vote, please, Doug.
Councillor English,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Kelleher McLennan,
Yes.
Councillor Metcalf,
Yes.
Councillor Redden,
Yes.
Councillor Tully,
Yes.
Councillor Bratney,
Yes.
Mayor Crate.
Yes.
We are now adjourned, and